2020 PGA Show at the Wilson booth with Mr. Thurman. We traded up from John, the vice president of
R&D.
R&D. So this is the guy that John works for.
Kinda. We work together.
There you go.
Okay.
And we're going to go over the new releases from Wilson, starting with the launch pad and what it's going to do for you.
So we'll start with the iron or the driver?
We'll start with the driver. That's what everybody likes, the driver.
Everybody always wants to talk about the driver.
That's right.
So with Launchpad, if you talk about our product line, you talk about the distance aspect of the product line that we do. We have obviously our D7 franchise that fits a very broad spectrum of players. We also recognize there's a spectrum of players that need maximum help, not only distance, but at maximum help and just making the game easier to play. So Launchpad is all about that. So with this one, the driving concept behind it was came from this notion of that the worst hand signal at golf, and I'll back up for the camera, is 4 right. Nobody likes to do this. This is not as bad as 4 left is not as bad as 4 right. Isn't that, you ever thought about that? You're mad about this and you're embarrassed about this. And so, when you go in and you start talking about left to right ball flight and try to prevent that hand signal, like what can you do? So anybody that really suffers from a severe outside to in swing that starts the ball left and brings the ball back to right, we want to try to help them hit the ball straighter. Not every slicer slices every ball. Sometimes they hit a straight ball and they look at themselves and go, well, wow, if I just turn this way and hit that, if I did that every time, then my game is good. So we have a lot of teaching professionals in our group that talk about this very concept. If you can just get the golfer to help turn themselves to hit the ball straighter, that would work to their advantage. So the premise behind this driver is how do we increase the frequency of people hitting that dreaded straight ball? And if they do it more often, then they'll have a higher propensity to actually turn and hit the ball right. So everything with this driver was built off of the project name was actually LOL, and that stood for left of left. That's how it's built. This driver was built. But we wanted to make sure this was built a very serious approach. We didn't want this to look like an anti-slice driver, for instance. So all the things on it are done very subtly. The offset on the driver helps a player close the club face, obviously. The center of gravity location on this driver is not only very heelward, it's also very forward, and that does 2 things. It also promotes, club face closure and impact, the club square, and the forward center of gravity actually takes the spin off the ball, because when you hit a slice, you spin the ball quite a bit. If you can take the spin off the ball, it'll go straighter from that perspective too. So that's very important. It's 2 degrees upright. You should know that as a builder. And it's got a very large bulge on it. So we've actually moved the face angle is closed, but it's not as noticeable to that. So we want somebody to, when they're playing it, to look very, very traditional. And so it's just built with a lot of left in it. So that's the launch pad.
So the one, when they show the draw bias, when you have the weight in it, is that truly where it's at, or is that just a design feature?
There's that's a design feature, obviously, to have people understand that this is what this driver is designed to do with heel weighting. It's actually incorporated into wall thicknesses and things like that and choices. Center of gravity is the most important thing, and it's toward the heel.
And then those non-adjustable hosel, which doesn't bother me in the slightest.
Right.
So I'm good with that. And the launch pad iron. I am getting tons of questions about this one in comparison to other competitors, but we saw it was hollow bodied and really, really wide and really, really strong.
Yes. What is this one about?
Yeah.
It's also the other thing, right? There's nothing worse in the world laying the turf over a ball, right?
Oh, geez.
If you hit one thin and you hit it, skull it over the green, you feel better about yourself than if you moved it 3 feet. And so what we want to do is help that high-frequency duffer, and that's the name for this, actually have a higher chance of what we call thin to win, which means the game will get easier if they're advancing the golf ball. And this iron is designed with all that in mind. So if you notice, it has a very flat sole, obviously, and then the magic comes in this very late-breaking bounce angle that gets the leading edge up, that as the club comes in gets into the turf, it keeps the leading edge riding above that as long as possible, and increases the frequency when somebody will catch the ball cleanly. So one way players can get longer, and we did this study with a lot of individuals, they were averaging 10 to 20 yards longer just because they were hitting the ball cleaner. And that's important.
Quality of shot is hugely important.
If you're hitting it slightly fat or things like that, especially if somebody has a very steep swing, this will help them enjoy the game a lot better. So keeping the ball in play with the driver, advancing the ball toward the green with the launch pad. Very easy to hit.
Is that able to be bent if I need to bend it?
I believe this is. John would be better at this question, but yes, it can be bent.
All righty. Hollow body construction, really friendly on the turf, should be good to go. I am all keen about short game.
Okay.
So we got 2 new wedges. We got the high toe and a forged model.
Yep, exactly. So everything we're doing from our perspective for our brand on tour with people like Gary Woodland or Kevin Strillman or Brendan Stills, we want to make sure that they play as many clubs of ours as they possibly can play. So we listen to their feedback and want to make sure that everything they've got from their putter to their driver is a Wilson staff product. So staff model in and of itself stands for that's our staff, and this is the model they're playing, and it goes back for a long time. We take a very different approach to staff model products. Everything is about subtlety of detail, about performance first. So performance is king. And we make sure that it's very clean aesthetic because everything is very important here. So from we have, obviously we're not the first high toe wedge company out there, but a lot of players have gravitated toward that, as well as the grooves extending all the way, to the end of the blade length. So a lot of people want to lay them wide open. A lot of people can't play them wide open, but everybody wants to try.
Is that purely the reason for the high toe versus the standard?
When you lay a club wide open, you're bringing the ball impact actually runs
goes across,
up this way.
right.
So if you're just a little bit of a fluffy lie, your chances of catching the upper half of a wedge is actually pretty high. So it gives you that last little bit of ability to kind of make sure you have enough spin on the ball to control it. So these are the 2. We have the forge that's more traditional and that everybody loves, and we have a new shape for this one as well.
It's a clean look. I like that.
Very clean look.
It's nothing outrageous.
Nope.
It's not. And sometimes you get the big hump right there that gets it started real quick. This is very, 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 very
straight, very clean. So this is, again, if they're going to be played on tour, they have to be what those guys want, and that's what staff model's all about.
Okay. Is that truly a fluid feel?
Absolutely.
Is it really?
If John
bore through?
I'll let him answer that question. I'll let you take it apart.
I will. I guarantee it.
Yes, it is.
Now, do you get to interact with a lot of the tour guys being in R&D? How many guys have been grinding wedges, been grinding the soles?
Oh, they all touch them. They all touch them. They all want just their little specific areas of relief on there for how they want to set it up behind the ball. And, so they have their different...
The dreaded tour grind.
Yes, and let's just get rid of all that.
That's right.
Yeah.
Get off the back. All right, and when my rep brought me that, I was completely happy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the D7 forge now.
Right.
Now, with the inclusion of the D7, and no more C's, no more D. Well, you got the D.
Right.
Where do you see your model lines going now? Okay. Because you had D, C, and F. Everybody understood that.
Right.
And now the C's are gone.
Right.
And the F's are V's.
Yes.
To an extent. And now we have D's.
Correct. So I think what you would probably understand is that we recognize that the D players broken up into a lot of different types of players. Right. The D7 franchise in and of itself is designed for a 10+ handicapper that a wide range has a very small. It has a very pleasing visual top line to it, and it's packed with technology underneath to help people hit the ball further. But we know when we're doing demo events, we have the player that comes in and goes, do you have something that's just a little
less
better,
offset,
right? And so we had a lot of success with D7. We were coming off of C300 Forge, which was very successful for us.
I slayed it with that club.
Yes. So the D7, we felt like from our brand, that D7 Forge was more applicable because it allowed D7 franchise to continue, and it gives us a different positioning for somebody that's looking at D7 as an option to do something that's a little bit smaller in a blade length. It has the same power holes, compact blade size. Kevin Choi is bagging these now that we've signed him.
Really?
Yeah. So it's a very playable iron because even tour players like to hit the ball further.
Oh,
so
sure.
That's the case. So the D7 Forge does that. It's got a really fast face, got a urethane polymer behind it to make it feel more forged, and then it's got the power holes that really bring the velocity up.
And we saw that this was an 8620 carbon.
Yep.
Now, then the question I was going to ask John is, what's the difference between 8620 and 1025, and why do you prefer that?
That's a good question for John. It was his choice.
Well, we've given John the nod more than a couple of times since he's taken over, basically running the R&D. That you can see the handiwork, the new modern look, the modern feel.
Right.
It sits in the bag, looks really, really nice.
Well,
you know, and the biggest improvement's been in the Woods hybrids line.
Right.
Where you always used to tell him in the day, although it may have worked, it wasn't real pretty in the bag.
Yeah.
And he knew that, and he came out. That C300, I thought was awesome. I said, that's a heck of a step, and you can just see the continuing improvements.
Well, as one of the harder parts of our job is we have a very we say two things: performance is king, but design drives desire, and you have to have both those two things right. It's just as hard to engineer the performance into the product it is to engineer the desire into the product as well, and you got to do them simultaneously. So, but we always take performance first, and we always will, because we want people to enjoy the game better.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much for filling in for John.
Oh, no problem. I'm good.
Okay,
I'm going to jump over here with this gentleman.
Very good. Thank you much. And let's see your scores. Go low.